And one item on the agenda is old business, 7.1 green trip application and planning and development. And Mr. Proctor, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, everybody, for being here tonight. I've got a short presentation for you, roughly 16 slides. Feel free to interrupt me anytime along the way. This is for a green trip grant application. Just kind of a quick overview for today. We're going to go over a quick review, our business case proposal so far, operation cost estimate, ridership estimate, and application so far, public response, and summary. So about 16 slides. So just a quick review, this green trip grant covers 66% of the capital costs for new projects. Strathmore, there's over $100 million in funding available for us in the Calgary region. All projects must be fully accessible and must align with provincial objectives. So we fall within this provincial region of the Calgary region. And we submit our grant application to the CRP who's helping us apply. So our initial ask has been for two 14-passenger buses. They seat 12 people plus 2 wheelchairs and 23 bus stop signs. Our ask is for $180,000, of which we'd be responsible for $60,000 up front. They would be town-owned buses, and if you remember last time, we're going to seek the aid of a contractor, or look at seeking the aid of a contractor. This is our bus. We got a quote for about $80,000 out of Edmonton. There's 12 seats plus 2 wheelchair. There's a rear and side lift option. That picture there shows side lift. So just a quick review. We've had our draft application to the CRP on May 20th. Our final business case and application is due June 30th. And the green trip deadline, overall provincial deadline, is August 31st, 2016. Municipal applications, so anything from a town or city, require council resolution. The province may require further information after submission, and funds are awarded as the project is completed or completes certain milestones. So each application requires a business case in a sentence: prove to the CRP, the province, the public why the money should be given to us. Make a case, show some financial support, in writing, that kind of thing. And the town has received 2 letters of interest from companies that wish to partner with us. So again, this would be a contractor service. We would own the buses, but we'd have some help from a contractor. This would go through a public tender process. We can negotiate things like maintenance, storage, relationship, route. It'll involve other town departments. Sorry, Pat Fuel.
Thank you. Through the chair to Chuck, could you just go back one slide? 2 companies that wish to partner with us. Do you know what do you mean by 2 companies wanting to partner? What does that involve?
2 companies, 2 people from the private sector have submitted letters saying that they would like to be the contractor for the town of Strathmore to deliver transportation service. They would like to be the drivers.
Okay.
And handle the administration kind of side of things.
Okay.
We received 2 letters.
Are you at liberty to tell us what they are?
I can, but we can go in camera. Just those are kind of third-party business details. I'm happy to go over that, but let's go in camera if
I
that's
move
the
to
way.
go in camera, Your Worship. Let's do it quickly.
Do you want to do it now or?
Let's go
Do
through.
you want to do in camera now or later?
Do camera after. Or no, do you want to know?
Well, yeah, because, yes, I do want to know.
Okay.
Okay. I'll take a motion to go in camera. We have a motion to go in camera? Yes? All in favor? Carried?
Okay, so back to the public tender process. We would negotiate things like maintenance, storage, relationship, route, etc. We need the help of other town departments on this one. Public tender can take a few months. So business case details, both contractors propose a local transportation service. So this would be one small bus on a small loop through town, 4 to 5 days a week. Hourly estimate so far would be 30 service hours per week. That could be 5 days a week, that could be 4, but that 30 hours is used in our calculations there. We'd serve our vital stops. We'd have origins on either end of the route with destinations in the middle. And we'd have stops that are doctors, pharmacies, groceries, adult living, fixed and low income downtown and Kinsman Park. So we don't want to overextend and try to do too much with one route. We want to aim for a successful route which will carry people, get great reviews, and help shape the future of transit if we decide to go this way. It's a small system. It can be very cost effective. We're not talking millions of dollars. We're talking a few $100,000 in our first year, down to maybe 80 in our second and third year. So we have two contractor options kind of received to date. Option one is a company operates locally with financial support from the town in the order of $85,000 year one, $80,000 year two, and $75,000 year three. So this would be purely local. This could be a pilot project if we decide to go down this road for 2 to 3 years with the option to renew. So a pilot project for 3 years with this company would be about $300,000 for all 3 years.
Councillor Graychuk?
So, okay, these numbers, that does not include the purchase price of the bus, right?
That is correct, Councillor Graychuk. Add about $60,000 for the capital.
Including the stop signs and, or the bus?
So $60,000 gets us the 2 buses and the signs. After we pay that $60,000 once, that's it, and then we just incur the operation costs. So for example, the year one, the $85,000 would just be operations. Add our $60,000 onto that, that would be $145,000 for year one.
Go ahead, Councillor Phil.
Thank you. Through the chair to Chuck. As far as option one goes with the year one, year two, year three, would this be a signed contract for the 3 years, or what would happen if we found out that, or if we determined that in year one we're not happy with the services or how it's being run?
I might need to pass that question on to administration, just the way a contractor's service would work. I'm sure we could work out those details in the public tender process. We'd have some sort of contract written out. I don't know what would happen if we decide to cancel after year one. James or Linda, maybe, do you have any experience with something like that happening?
Go ahead.
If I may, through the chair, the answer is it depends on how we frame up the go forward with the whole process. What clauses would be included to withdraw? What would be the notice period? There would have to be a fairly reasonable notice period of some type. What that would look like, I can't answer until we actually got into the details.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll ask a question in regards to the buses. So you purchased the buses. What's the life expectancy of the bus?
So the life expectancy of those buses that you saw earlier was about 6 to 10 years, depending on
Maintenance?
how we use them. They are a bumpy ride, the people say in Edmonton, but if we have 2 buses, we can kind of alternate the use.
And so if we have 2 buses and they last 10 years, what kind of financial planning are we doing in regards to replacing those buses?
We would have to mention our plan in the grant application.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so would that amount be included in our annual costs per year?
Ooh, no, it has not been included in our annual costs per year.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was option 1. Option 2, so this, we got an offer from another company that just offers a basic cost per operating hour. I've got an estimate of $60 to $75 per service hour. So I'll go over these 2 options in more detail right now. So option 1 was, again, this company that operates locally with financial support from the town, roughly $85,000 per year. It could be a 2 to 3 year pilot project with the option to renew. These local people that want to do this. Option 2, again, the basic cost per operating hour, $60 to $75 an hour, potentially more. That could be on the lower end, depending on what our tender looks like and what kind of details we work out at later stages. So a service operating 30 hours per week, 1,560 annual hours would cost the town $93,000 to $109,000. We would keep all revenue and fares from that one, so we can expect 10% back, maybe a little bit less in our first year. So just those bottom 2 points on your screen there would be the net cost to the town. So 84 to 98,000 for 10%, and 15%, 79,000 and 92,000. We expect kind of ridership to start off lower and increase over time. So there's our ridership estimates have been included with our application there, and we have heard from Stantec of an average of $1,250 per month or 15,000 annually is a reasonable kind of number for new service. So that's 9.6 rides per hour. Remember, this is kind of a smaller 14-passenger bus. You can only get 14 people on it. So we're going to max out that ridership. So application so far, we have most of our application complete. We can add to our application and business case if we need to after this meeting. Again, it is due at the end of the month. We still require a financial sustainability plan and ongoing benefits monitoring plan. These can be small appendices that refer to existing town policy, financial stabilization, that kind of thing. And additional town departments are going to be needed moving forward if we decide to go down the road. Just quickly, I know I've gone over this in the past, but we've done a survey, 517 responses, mostly online. Results were pretty positive. 80% support the idea of a service in town. 60% said that they'd use it. I think these numbers are a little high, but people might say that they're going to use it and then not end up using it after all. Morning, midday, and afternoon all scored relatively evenly, and the most common reasons for travel include activity, health appointments, stores, library, entertainment, downtown visiting and shopping, business errands, eating, and events. So I think our biggest respondees were seniors. Draft FCSS needs assessment, so this is something our FCSS department has been working on. They've completed this kind of study. They recognize transportation was in one of their top 5 priority areas. Lack of affordable public transit is a current issue for Strathmore, including seniors and parents with young children. Yes?
Councilor Graychuk, through the chair, and that survey, I mean, it was pretty kind of a light survey, so to speak, not a real controlled survey. I think that, and what I was reading between the lines on that survey was that if it costs some money, those people, it wouldn't be that, the answer wouldn't be yes, far from that high. As soon as we tell them it's going to be $140,000 or $130,000 for the first year, I bet you the answers change dramatically.
Through the chair to Councilor Graychuk, thank you. The first question in that public survey was, do you support the idea of having fully accessible public transportation system in Strathmore, recognizing some public funds will be used? So it did say that in the number 1 question, but you're right, it did not give a number in that question.
And that's the big thing, is the number.
The big thing's the number.
Okay, continue then, please.
Thank you.
So the FTSS, it was identified that transportation is an issue in Strathmore. Okay, so summary. So we're under a deadline to get the grant in if we want to go with Green Trip. This has been a very streamlined and fast process. It's a new idea for Strathmore. Of the other municipalities in the region, you know, they kind of had it, I think, a little bit easier than us because they had an existing system. They just said, hey, we need some new buses, or hey, we need some new bus stops. Whereas Strathmore has been like, hey, we need a new system. We need an entirely new idea to get going on this. But it's been a learning experience. We have a lot of good information here. I just want to say that public transportation costs a lot of money. We're going to lose money on this pretty much no matter what we do, but that doesn't mean that it's not worth it. There's a good chance that there being other grants in the future, some with operational support. And that being said, we have a great chance of getting the Green Trip funding if we decide to proceed. So our recommendation tonight is just for council's discussion. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck.
And questions? Councillor Fuel?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair to Chuck or administration, I guess. What would be the negatives of applying for this? If we apply for this before June 30th, I realize we then have the chance to get the funding for the 2 buses. Are there negatives to us applying now? I guess we're committed then, obviously, to having the 2 buses if we get the grant.
Through the chair to Councilor Fuel, I'm not sure if there would be a drawback to applying and then saying we want to pull out. The only challenge with that is, you know, we'd be kind of wasting someone's time. This goes to the CRP's board of executives for a decision as well. But I don't know if we would be in trouble or not if we decided to just apply for the grant and then keep working, keep gathering information, and then if we decide that it's not good for us, withdrawing, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Is it a subsequent question? Because Councillor Peterson is before you.
Yes, she was, go ahead.
I just have two questions, one for you. Are these wheelchair buses, do they have the lift on them?
They do, through the chair to
Yeah,
council.
I just wasn't sure when I looked at it.
They have a side ramp, I
Yeah.
think is the standard one, with the option to have a rear ramp, yeah.
And my second question is probably for Councillor Sobel or for our mayor on CRP. Are they still planning on doing the pilot study here?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's
And if you'd like to, Mr. Proctor, you could like to even mention the discussion that was had last week on it
Thank you,
with
that's what I was
CRP.
gonna- yeah.
And
Meeting I missed.
Mr. Proctor was attended the meeting, so go ahead. You can touch on that briefly if you want.
So councillors, we met with Etor and the CRP last week, Mayor Al and I. We talked about the potential idea of having a regional transit pilot called the On It come to Strathmore. It'd be a Strathmore, Chestermere, Calgary route, strictly regional. It would pick people up in town, pick up people in Chestermere, and then drop them off at the LRT station in Calgary. Discussions involved maybe kind of improving a parking lot in town here, and maybe having a couple stops on that regional line in Strathmore that might be able to serve the locals as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Councillor Gaychuk?
Well, excuse me. I can't just see going ahead with this, even if it's a possibility of getting the buses. We're wasting a lot of time, a lot of energy, and it's way too premature. We can't afford the $140,000 a year for one thing. I'm talking with Airdrie. They said that's the worst thing that they ever did was start to be premature, and there's 60,000 people now, and they are saying it is so cost inefficient. It's just unbelievable, and they need it because they got into the system. And you're taking away from private sector. I don't know how many people, I've never been asked that we need a bus service in town. To me, it's way too premature, and why are we going forward with it? It's just, there's too many other factors involved. We're too new, but the money could be put, that we're, for this, could be put to some other better uses by far. And I would not vote for this.
We pass questions, or are we into discussion?
Well, we're still into questions, but
Well, go ahead.
I'll take
Go
a
ahead.
motion if you want to,
No, no.
we have some questions. Okay, I think Councillor Bulkman is,
Oh, go ahead. Were you ahead, Councilor?
No, I don't have a question.
go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the chair to Chuck. Great idea, Chuck. I know I had you come to the handy bus meeting and you gave a excellent presentation there. We discussed it after you left. We all thought it's a good idea, but we're a few years too soon for this. Again, Councillor Graychuk used my word I had written down here, premature. I firmly believe we're 5 to 7 years away from bus service in Strathmore. We also feel the expenses per year are going to be higher than you got projected here. To me, to us, or to me as a councillor, Strathmore is not ready at this time for this kind of service. Don't forget, we still have the handy bus service and we have 2 taxi companies in town. And really, when you read the handy bus letter, they feel that 2 buses at this time would not be practical. 1 would make more sense. And it's not really adding to the service that already exists with the taxi and the handy bus. The biggest complaint we hear all the time is evenings and weekends. And what's getting projected here doesn't even cover those hours. I don't think I can support this either.
Did you have a question?
I have a
Councillor Walsh? Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Mr. Proctor. So, based on your best predictions, we can look at about $30,000 a year in potential income, is that correct? Or my numbers, I'm not very good at math, so as emails been shown to me. Is that about, I'm averaging about 15,000 people on $3 is about, my numbers could be wrong. 45,000?
Through the chair to Councillor Walls, this one sheet that was handed out, it shows income total there for the first option that we went over, and that would be 20,000 to 30,000 per year revenue that we
Okay.
would keep.
Okay,
The other option would be about 10% of, sorry, so it would cost us roughly 90,000 to 110,000, and we'd expect 10% back. So it could be $9,000 from revenue in our first year. Ridership would go up a little bit. So we're right in that range of about $10,000 to $20,000 per year. And I think that's being generous. We don't want to undersell this at all. We've got to be careful.
absolutely. Your worship, if I may ask you a substantive question? Based on your option here, option 1, 85, 80, and then 75, what happens if the company starts running at a more of a loss? Is the town going to be expected to kick in more money to obviously make this a zero balance?
Through the chair to Councillor Walls, we don't know. At this point, those would have to be details that would be outlined in our agreement with them. Depending on the contract that we sign, it could say, this is it. This is $85,000. That's it. You guys make it work. The other way could have a fallback just in case, but again, it depends on the negotiations that we have with that company. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Your worship.
I think we want to get into debate, so I'll take a motion if you, unless you have
I was just
some
going to add
questions.
one more question.
Please.
Following up on your point, Your Worship, is there a way we could find out how much we would have to factor in as far as our losses per year in order to determine replacement of those buses in a 10-year plan? How would we, because we'd have to look at inflation, increased costs of a replacement bus, and that would have to be factored in. So how would we find out how much that would add in potentially each year over the next 5 to 10 years? Because that would add to our operating expense, or that would add to our costs, yeah. And I just don't know how to factor that in.
Did you want to answer that, Councillor Graychuk?
No, I was just going to ask another question.
Okay.
I might use my lifeline, phone a friend, ask administration. what that would look like,
Just
how
quickly,
would
if the bus costs $100,000 and you had to
Over
replace
10
it in 10 years, divided by 10 for easy numbers.
10,000.
So it's an additional 10,000 per year.
Okay.
And that's just easy, quick
Okay,
way of doing it.
Again, through the chair to Councillor Field, we'd only have one bus on a loop. We could use that bus for 6 months and then use the second one that's been in storage. We can kind of alternate buses to drag out that lifetime a little bit longer.
okay. Thank you.
And
Good question.
Councillor Graychuk?
Wait, well, how much is the provincial government putting into these buses?
The provincial government would cover 66% of the buses, so we have a $180,000 ask. They'd put in 110,000, I believe.
And that's,
I just, they say to me, maybe continue funding. The financial stress they're under now, I don't see any continuing funding from them.
Yeah, through the
Right.
chair to Councillor Graychuk, there's absolutely no support for operation costs under this grant. This is just capital costs only, so capital costs used on the initial purchase of the buses. They don't offer any operational support. That being said, there might be additional grants in the future, additional stuff in the future that will help with operations.
I'm just saying, I don't see it, because of the financial stress they're under, I don't see anything coming from them.
Councillor Walls has a question?
Your worship, to our CEO, this may be an unfair question to ask, but do you believe the town could fund a $100,000 a year loss on a project like this?
Don't answer that.
I should say, do you expect taxes to go up to cover the loss, or what do you?
Through the chair, I guess it would depend on what council's priorities are in terms of revenue priorities, whether council is amenable to covering a subsidy for this or not. We haven't drilled into that. I don't know what council's position are. Yes, we would have to come up with the money somehow, whether it was through taxation revenues or some other sources or cuts in service to do it. So that would be the way we would have to consider it. But I don't have anything that I can move forward right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions? I'll take a motion, please.
Your worship, I'm just trying to
Okay.
work on that. I would move that council support the Green Trip grant application, which would subsequently direct administration to apply for two 14-seat transportation buses.
Thank you. Discussion?
I would just like to say,
No, no.
to the chair, oh, sorry,
That's all right,
Councillor
he did
Councillor
have his hand
Peterson.
up. He had his hand up.
Did he?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay, Councillor Graychuk, sorry.
through the chair, that we know the operating cost of this already, and we just can't afford it. It's simple as that. So why go further? It's wasting everybody's time and hours, and we know the net outcome. And always those operating costs are lower than, the estimate is always lower than they really are, every time. So I would not support it. It's just wasting time.
Were you
Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay.
I would find it difficult to support a plan that, that has so many unknowns at this point. And the other reason that I would set it aside at this time is that we are waiting, what I think will be a very efficient study being put forward by the CRP. And I think that project will offer us some great insight into sustainability in uncertain times. And if we were going to put money forward at this time for much-needed transportation in our community, as Councillor Blockland said, particularly evenings and weekends for senior population primarily, and for people with disabilities as well, I'd much rather invest additional sustainable dollars into our existing handy bus program where there already is an infrastructure that's working extremely well. And I would also like to think about this group to think about a future meeting with our county counterparts and with Siksika, who also has considerable transportation needs to Calgary, and work toward that with the On It program, with the potential there. I'd much rather put our efforts and our energies into that. And I know that in very cursory conversations with nothing promised, the county also I think is thinking about ways that they can better support the handy bus as well, and that's where I would like to put our energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Sobel, please.
Thanks. One thing I have learned in the CRP transportation meetings that I've attended is a strong recommendation that you do have a local transportation system in place prior to a regional one. And the philosophy on that is that you're formulating a method of getting people to a location where they will be able to get on the regional system. So it's one of these, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? The suggestion is that the local transportation system should be in place and for a while before the regional one. And what this does is it changes people's philosophy and way of thinking in regards to transportation as well. Because this whole system of on it, regional transportation, local transportation, it's more of a thinking thing. People have got to start realizing that there's, instead of taking your vehicle downtown, even if you have a vehicle, that you can drop a couple bucks or $3 in a transportation system and go downtown. And what we're doing is of course we're trying to reduce the amount of vehicles that are on our road. That's the way it's happening in Calgary. And I'm not trying to compare ourselves to Calgary, heaven forbid. But I don't see why we as a community of 14,000 can't start thinking that way. And we're dealing with areas of sustainability and lesser fossil fuels that are going up in the air. But there's more to that than in a transportation system. These are things that there's a lot of positive things, and I've heard a lot of negative things, and I'm not ready to dispute that this is a precarious situation. But I'm just asking you as a council to think a little bit wider on this issue. This is something that could very well improve economic development. There are employment issues in for instance, on some of our businesses on the highway. This is an opportunity of providing employees an opportunity to get to their places of employment in a cheaper fashion, rather than walking in the middle of winter or taking a more expensive method of transportation. And a lot of these people are low income and they don't have vehicles. I also believe that this is something that would assist our seniors in daytime medical appointments in a more frugal manner of attending. And it's interesting because I've heard from a lot of seniors in regards to the fact that we do need a transportation system. So I'm surprised that nobody else may have heard this, but it's been very loud and clear to me that this is something that's desired in our municipality. And I'm not ready to discount the surveys that were done, and I don't see anything light about those surveys. These were good questions asked of our population, and the numbers are fairly impressive. And I'm surprised that we're so prepared to discount what a lot of our residents feel is something that is needed in our community. This is not about this system that we have in mind is not certainly not about the majority of people in our community, but it is about the people that do not have easy access to transportation. And you know, I just think these people have been given not a very good opportunity to move about in our community, and I hear that on a regular basis. So I am ready to support this. I want to move our town forward, and I want to stop being so negative. I mean, just because it hasn't worked in other communities. We have made changes. We are not doing the Airdrie thing. We're going with smaller buses, and the reason we're going with 2 buses is not to use 2 at one time, but to have a spare, and very simply. So it's not a very huge system that we're planning. It's a very modest transportation system, but I think it can be a very effective one. And that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walz?
Thank you, Your Worship. I really wish to thank administration and Chuck particularly for the hours and hours that you have spent on this project. I really want you to know that, Chuck, that I very much appreciate all the time you spent. A couple things concern me, and the first one that really concerns me is the letter that came from the Strathmore Handy Bus. You know, these guys have been operating buses since 1986. They understand how the system works. They understand that, and when you get lines like they're saying more time needed in depth, more understanding of fuel, more understanding of this. These guys are really the experts in the field, and I think that right now I'm not prepared to support this because I'm unsure of. There's more questions that need to be answered in my mind before I can comfortably say yes, we're prepared to take this on. I'd be much more excited if the handy bus said, hey, listen, we'd like to jump on this boat and really start to move this forward. One of the other things that concerns me is if I was going to jump on this bus and then maybe if there's a couple of other, if I was maybe in a hurry to get to work or something like that, and there was some, other people getting on or off the bus when using wheelchairs and ramps like that, there could be a bit of a time delay. So maybe it's a different circumstances and so forth. But at this time, the couple things that scare me is, first of all, the economic time we're in. I believe the price of fuel is going to start increasing here quite heavily. I believe that we're going to start to see a lot more hardship in this town, and we've seen other organizations now shutting their doors because of they're going into tough times. And I think the provincial government rather is going to have a real tough time balancing their budget, which is going to really scare and hurt all of us even more. So right now, unfortunately there's too many unknowns. I really do appreciate all of your work. I know you put hours and hours into this, Chuck. I really do appreciate that, though. Thank you.
Have you spoken already yet, Councillor Field?
No.
No? Okay. Councillor Field?
Just one of the comments about the contributions, contributions from the provincial government. We've already, I believe you're already planned on them not contributing as far as operating costs, and we've got it stated here that they're going to contribute 66%, so their contribution is locked in for what they said they're going to do. It's up to us to do the operations. The only thing that's ever worried me is how much the operations would be, and I think that's similar to what Councillor Walls is saying. But I also see that if you have two buses and you're using one for a while and then letting the other one sit for a while, that may also cut down on your costs to replace them over time. So this is a really tough one because I agree that we're poised to start doing something. I wish we were a little bigger with this opportunity coming our way. But I do also see it, and the other point Councillor Walls made as far as economics and being, we're in a real downturn. It's the people who need transportation to their jobs that is impacted by the economy and its downturn too. So if I'm working at a place where I need to get a ride and I'm struggling, this could be the cheapest and most efficient way to get to my job as opposed to trying to hire a taxi. So, this is a tough one to decide upon. I know we're poised to try to make the move forward too. That's all I wanted to say, Your Worship.
Thank you. And what I will say in regards to this is a grant application only. And when you do your grant application and you submit, I suggest that you're going to have to drill down a little bit further in regards to costs. And you're going to have to come back to council should the grant be approved and ask if we would start a transit system. Am I correct?
Your Worship, I believe so. Part of the details that we haven't done yet is this financial sustainability plan. I think we'd have to provide costs, but they'd be similar to what were presented tonight. We can submit it to the CRP and they might ask for more information. That's definitely a possibility too, if they wanted some more information on costs.
So my question is, are you going to have to do a lot more research in regards to the costs to our town in regards to the operation of the transit system? Or do you feel comfortable with the costs that you have submitted here?
I think that we're pretty comfortable with the two options that we've presented here tonight for costs. They're close.
Because I can support the grant application, but I have some concerns in regards to going forward with the transit system. So that's all I'll say. Councillor Peterson, please.
Thank you, Worship. I really think that Councillor Sobel makes some great points about starting to think about a new transportation reality in our community. But I also remember that when our tour was here with CRP Transportation, he talked about optimum size of population for transit inside being at 30,000. And that was when we were in discussion. And he was actually talking about the Okotoks to Airdrie back and forth and how that's an optimum size. And I know that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something in town. But I still think that while Councillor Sobel makes excellent points about what we can think about leading up to this, there are points in between. And when Atur was here, he talked about the CRP study focusing on a made-in-Strathmore solution. I've had lots of time to think about that since he was here a year ago. And I think about how the competencies of our neighbors in doing medical transportation, for instance. And there is nobody better at doing medical transportation in this community, both within Strathmore, to Strathmore, and to Calgary, than Siksika. And they run buses daily, and they're not full, and we've never accessed them. And it seems to me that it would be part of that meaningful partnership and collaboration that Atur talked about as that made in Strathmore solution. We also have the Prairie Shuttle, I forget what from Medicine Hat, that's going through here regularly, and oftentimes I understand it's not full. So there's another option there. And plus, as Councillor Graychuk talked about, our own entrepreneurs who work within our community. So I think that there is an interim step yet. And it's not the $80,000 that concerns me. It's the sustainability within that $80,000 and putting it into a place where we know what we'll get for that money. I have no problem. I really think that this council needs to think about enhancing the existing handy bus and to talk about some of those, address some of those things that you did in your study. And I want to say that I think that study is highly legitimate. I think it was a great study and has lots of credibility and veracity in it. And so I think that postponing this at this time, or we're not positioned at this time, but still putting funding into transportation into a knowable reality would be a useful endeavor. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Graychuck?
And one final point, I think it is all about the money. I mean, it's tough economic times, as many councillors had mentioned. $120,000, I can't justify to the public to spend this at this time on operating costs and purchasing the buses. There's many other facets in town that the people need for this kind of money. Recreation is asking for ball diamonds, and we could go on and on and on. And I think that's what we got to concern ourselves with, and then maybe consider this down the road. It's far too premature, and I can't justify it whatsoever strictly on the dollars and cents. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, did you want the motion reread? Does anybody want the motion reread?
I forgot it already.
You forgot it? Would you mind rereading the motion, please?
I have that council support the Greenship grant application and instruct administration to submit the application for 2 14-seat transportation buses.
So the motion is to support a grant application for 2 buses. That's it.
That's it, or do I read that automatically means the purchase of 2 of those buses?
Go ahead. Yes.
No, the motion is that council support the grant application and instruct administration to submit it for 2 14-seat transportation buses.
And then, should we get the grant application, the application from administration would have to come back to council to purchase.
Well, yeah, I realize that the way I read that, or the way I'm listening to that, we submit the grant application and we are going to buy the 2 buses with council's approval.
That's the way I read it, yeah.
Okay, good, thanks.
You read it that it doesn't have to come back to council for approval?
That's correct.
Could we get some clarification? We have a possibility that there might be a confusion in regards to it's a grant application or it's a grant application with approval to buy if the grant is approved.
Your worship, just give me one moment to reword this.
Go ahead.
May I clarify with
Sure,
the
please.
mover of the
Yeah,
intention
yeah,
of the
that's a
motion,
good idea,
please?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I can amend that motion so that there's a requirement to come back to council to purchase.
If you would like to amend, that would be great. It's your motion.
Can you put that in there, Jim?
Still too much. We're wasting time.
Thank you, Your Worship.
But he turned off my mic. I want you to know.
All right.
Please.
I have
read.
that council support the Green Trip grant application and instruct administration to submit the application for 2 14-seat buses, and if approved, that the application come back to council for decision.
Your worship, a question on the motion.
Go ahead.
So, Your worship, a question on the motion. So if we decide to approve this grant, the grant goes in, and then all of a sudden we say, well, we're not really in the position to do that. What does that say to the CRP?
We're looking forward to their study.
Councillor Phil?
I think if we approve this motion, it allows us to go forward with the grant application. There is the risk that if we're approved and it comes back to us for approval for funding and decision on that, we could turn it down. Now, there is a cost involved in that because we've got people like Chuck working on the grant application, and we could undo that. So there's going to be time and money or time costs as far as our staff go. But if we want to at least proceed in considering this, we would approve this motion. But then we do, like I said, we do run the risk of time spent by staff in carrying on in this process.
Councillor Graychuk.
And back to the facts, we already know the operating costs. That's 1% the taxes are gonna have to go up. Why are we going any farther? I mean, are you guys gonna go with it? You're telling me that you're gonna go with it, that's what you're saying when you approve it. We already know the operating costs, and I think that's low. Why would we even pursue it any farther?
Okay,
Wasting everybody's time.
We have a motion on the floor.
Question.
I'm ready to call the question. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Defeated? Thank you. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Have a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Appreciate your time very much, Mr. Proctor.
Thanks. And you know what, this is not what